Hello, everyone. My guest today is Brian Powers. He's the founder and CEO of PactSafe, and a licensed attorney. Brian leads the strategic vision of the company's high-velocity contract acceptance platform. Before founding the company, his law practice focused primarily on representing the transactional needs of tech companies. Brian, you ready to take us to the top?
Let's do it.
All right. When you say transactional needs of tech companies, explain to me what that means. You're talking like M&A or fundraising docs or company formation or what?
Pretty much everything. So I help them start up. I help them raise money. I wrote their contracts. I help them sell their business. So everything but go to court.
Okay. So at what point did this friction get like so large, or you said, you know what, I'm going to hire some contract developer labor, try and build something to like solve this pain in-house? Yeah.
So it was a specific pain, right? So a lot of my tech clients, they were e-commerce and SaaS businesses that had, they're doing lots of click wrap agreements. So think about, I check a box, I click a button, I'm accepting terms of use, terms of service, whatever. They all had these massive contract stacks and pieces of software to manage every other type of contract in their business, nothing to manage click wrap agreements. So PactSafe was built to do just that, right? Plug in, make sure those things were enforceable, manageable, and at scale.
What is a click wrap agreement?
Click wrap agreement is any agreement where I check a box or I click a button or I take some action on a website, a mobile app, a device where I'm accepting some sort of legal terms.
Interesting.
So you've accepted plenty of those every day, right? When you're just installing an app or buying something online or using a new SaaS product.
Yep. So what you're saying is these things are not legally enforceable. You built tech to essentially give them more teeth, make them more enforceable.
They can be legal enforceable without PactSafe, but what we do is help make sure that it's manageable and enforceable at massive scale. So a lot of our customers, we're doing millions of agreements like that per day, right? So when we've done almost 1 billion agreements like that as a business already. So if you're just talking about one click wrap agreement a day for a very small company, not a very difficult thing to manage and prove.
Yep.
But when you're working with some of our customers are like the Wayfairs and DoorDashes of the world that are doing millions of these, it becomes a very, very difficult problem to solve.
Yep. Okay. So how did you structure your business model? Is it a SaaS model?
Yep. SaaS model.
Interesting. Okay. So give me a general sense here. I'm sure you have hundreds of different customer cohorts, but we don't have time to go down all of them. I mean, what's the average customer going to pay you per month or per year to use this technology?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty wide range, right? But I would say average deal size for us is about $50,000 a year.
Okay.
Some of those deals go way, way above that, and some will go down, right? So on the very, very low end, it's about $15,000 a year to use PactSafe, and then on the very high end, there's customers that are paying north of $250,000 a year.
Okay, but you think that the $50,000 a year is a fair average?
It is, especially for our bread and butter click wrap use case.
Yeah. Okay. So describe that customer to me. They sign up for $50,000 a year. About how many contracts are they signing per month? Like in other words, how do you price?
Yeah. So if somebody's paying us $50,000 a year, they're going to get, very simply, right, that's 15 million and down click wrap agreements a year. And then from there, the larger the business, right, you pay for more click wrap agreements for us to track. So that's in a nutshell, that's what $50,000 gets you, about 15 million click wrap agreements a year.
Any other value-based metrics you upsell against, like number of seats or feature-based upselling?
Sure. So there's a pretty strong transformational use case for our platform where people want to use click wrap agreements for more than what you would expect to see, right? So they want to use it for NDAs. They want to use it for high velocity sales agreements where they need lots of people in seats with the ability to send out some of these agreements. And instead of having it signed via e-signature on a PDF, they want people to just click a button to accept. So that is a significant driver to get, those larger deals that I mentioned. That deal size typically involve lots of seats, right? That's where the price starts to go up quite a bit.
Okay. So would you say upselling based off seats and upselling based off number of agreements signed per year are your two most effective upsell channels?
Yes. And then I guess the third one there are different, we call them delivery channels in PactSafe, where you can get a contract accepted by checking a box. You can get it accepted by message. You can get it accepted inside of a chatbot, things like that. So the more you want to have the more options you want for acceptance, right? That is probably the third cost driver around our platform fees.
Okay, interesting. Put this on a timeline for me. So when did you write the first line of code for the software?
First line of code was in 2012.
2012. Okay, and now this might be a painful question. How much did you spend on the MVP before your first dollar of revenue?
Not a whole lot, and I know those numbers because I self-funded the whole thing.
I figured.
It was about $70,000.
Oh, okay, that's not bad actually. So how did you do that? Where was the developer labor? Was it there in Indiana or somewhere else or what?
Yeah, it was right here in Indiana.
How'd you find them?
Just actually some people that I knew from practicing law in the tech world.
Yeah, I mean, what'd you tell them? Like, what was that first email to them? Like, hey, I have an idea. I'm willing to pay you like this kind of amount to get it done, or what'd it sound like?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I gave them a little bit of equity, a tiny bit of equity, and paid them cash. And we built, what essentially was just a prototype of our ClickWrap API. Things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah. When you say little, you're talking like less than 5%.
What's that?
When you say a little bit of equity, you're saying like less than 5%?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. So you get the MVP built, and then when was your first dollar of revenue on the product?
Probably about a year and a half after that. But at the time, this was just, it was meant to be a self-service SaaS product. Developer goes in, can access the API, and they can, drop a little snippet of code on a website, and now, hey, you have ClickWrap tracking. But around end of 2014, we figured out that this was more of an enterprise type problem. And so we stopped being self-service then. I went out and found two really smart co-founders. One was a product guy, one was a full stack engineer from Salesforce. And then we spent the next year building an enterprise grade product that could solve the same types of problems, right? But at a much, much larger scale.
Yep. Okay, good. So you scale. Now, besides yourself, I want to know how you got your first 10 customers.
First 10 customers. So a lot of just hustling with people I know, which that barely counts. We did we had really good SEO. So some inbound interest from blog posts and stuff like that. And then we launched I think it was called Beta List, where we had like 200 different developers sign up for our beta, and some of those turned into customers as well.
Okay, on the SEO terms, do you remember like your most effective early SEO term, the one that brought you the most traffic and signups monthly?
Yeah, ClickWrap best practices. That was where our first batch of enterprise interest came in. They found a blog post that I wrote that was optimized for ClickWrap best practices.
Yeah, that's interesting. So is this, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. Is this ClickWrap term this is a legal phrase people like search, their lawyers say, do you have ClickWrap? And it's like a term that they know to go search and research?
It is. Yeah. And it's either called ClickWrap, click through agreement, or click to accept. We deal mostly with legal personas, so we've zeroed in on the ClickWrap term, but we use all three in our sales and marketing.
Yeah, it's about you're talking about the one that Katie wrote, right? Back in 2017, January?
No, this one was before the blog post.
Yeah, the ClickWrap. You guys have a good article on it ranks number 1 right now for ClickWrap best practices.
Yeah, it might be a recycled one, but yeah, it's probably that one.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and maybe you're updating it, but no, okay, it's cool to just understand these terms. So that was the big term driver for you, and then Beta List also drove a bunch of these early signups. That's helpful to understand. So what I want to understand is that these are your first 10 customers. What are you guys at today? How many customers are you serving?
Just over 200.
Okay, and then it sounds like this is very much an enterprise sales motion. What's your total team size today?
Team size today is 32.
Okay.
We'll be 40-ish by the end of the month. So growing quite a bit right now.
Yeah. Well, growing expenses, hopefully revenue is growing at the same pace, right? Or higher, ideally much more.
It is. We've had a good year so far.
That's good. Okay. Of the 32 folks that you currently have, what's the breakdown between engineers and quota carrying folks?
We've been, so up until about 3 or 4 months ago, we were a very, very product and engineering heavy company, as we had to be. Mm-hmm. Our product plugs into very mission critical places. So we had to build out a decent sized engineering team. Right now, we're about 50-50 if you compare product and engineering to sales and marketing. Sales and marketing right now is growing a lot more than engineering and product.
What
and
about
probably
specifically quota carrying folks though?
quota carrying?
Yeah.
8.
Oh wow. Okay, that's pretty significant. So that's not an easy thing to
But
figure
most
out.
of that is new. Most of that's new, like in the past month.
Okay, when did you
So,
hire
so
your first quota salesperson?
first quota salesperson we hired about a year and a half ago.
Okay, and so how did you put a stake in the ground in terms of how to structure their comp plus, basically base plus commission? You have to set a quota target and things like this. How'd you put a stake in the ground there?
Yeah, well, early days, we just kind of did that, just kind of made it up and figured out where we wanted to go. We have a much more sophisticated model now, right? Like we have a very seasoned VP of marketing, VP of sales that have been with us for about 6 months post raising our Series A. So, initially how we came up with quotas was very, very non-scientific, very non-formulaic. Now all that's changed where we have quarterly and annual goals that are all driving our headcount, our quotas, our onboarding, all that stuff.
So assuming that average first year ACV is like 50 grand, how many, like what do you set quota at for like a first year or second year salesperson? Is it like 500 grand in ARR bookings over a year or $1 million, or how do you set that?
It's about that, right?
500?
It's about 500. It just depends. We're still figuring a lot of that out where we look at, we've tried to bucket our customer base into enterprise, mid-market, and SMB, with most of the focus being upper end of the mid-market, lower end of the enterprise. So the way that a quota is determined for any of those quota carrying people is a little bit different. And we're also still figuring out a lot about our pricing model, our sales cycle. The sales motions are starting to get more regular, less lumpy. So it's much more formulaic, but it's still a little bit of what's going to work and what's not, right?
You mentioned capital, so it sounds like you've raised. How much total have you raised to date?
$8 million total through 2 different rounds.
And why did you? And when was the last one?
Last one was about a year ago. It was a $5.5 million Series A.
Okay, so you're looking at raising right now then?
No,
not
yet. Probably raise again sometime this time next year. But we've built a pretty efficient model where we don't raise to hit metrics to raise again. We raise to grow a fundamentally sound business and then raise opportunistically. So yeah, but likely to take advantage of the opportunity, we will probably raise again in about a year.
Are you back to about break even now, or are you still being aggressive and kind of burning capital?
Right now, we're being pretty aggressive, but we should be back to break even early next year.
Okay, so when you say aggressive, I'm comfortable what your number is, where you can still sleep at night. Are you cool with like 50 grand a month burn or 100 grand a month burn? Where do you try and keep that at?
Yeah, we try to keep it under 100, 150, but that all adjusts every month based on what we're forecasting, right? How many people we've hired. We're pretty disciplined about keeping hiring gates down, even if our plan calls for adding more heads, if we're not achieving where we think we need to be from a cash perspective. But, because we're venture backed now, we do have growth goals that we want to hit in connection with our venture partners. So it's a healthy balance of remaining sustainable with incurring the burn that you need to grow.
Yep. And look, burn is totally fine, especially if the product is sticky. So let's talk quickly about that before we get more of your story. When you look at the past 12 months and you look at churn, what is your revenue churn over that period of time?
Yeah, so we're at about 115% net revenue retention, which is really good.
Well, peel that back for me though. So you have churn and expansion. What was churn?
So we had like 3% churn, 18% expansion.
That's great. Yeah, I would consider world-class to be up in the like 140 range, but based off your age and where you're at, like when I compare it to the other, interviews I've done, 115% is pretty darn good. How are you is most of that expansion from what you told me earlier? It's again, number of signed contracts annually. And then again, feature-based upselling plus the seats.
Pretty much, yeah. And most of our expansion has been purely organically. We are just now to the point where, we have some of our account execs working accounts and strategic accounts, and getting into upsell some of those. So we've been pretty lucky in that sense. We have a small customer success team that is mostly focused on retention, and most of our churn really is we bucket all of our churn by ideal and non-ideal churn. You close a lot of business early on where you're closing every deal you can. We don't do that anymore. So we have there's quite a few use cases that came in that are not ideal for us now. So we generally don't churn anybody that falls into that ideal churn bucket right. Yeah.
And what are you paying on the front end to get these customers fully weighted? Is it, full like 12-month payback period or 18-month payback period? Where are you at?
It's less than 12 months.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So to get a new $50,000 a year account, you're spending less than $50,000 to bring them in.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Are you generally pushing that up or down?
It's pushing up a little bit right now because we're a lot of our sales tactics and the way we're focusing on accounts is more enterprise driven now. And to do that, we're doing a lot of testing, experimentation. So that number is probably going up, but the goal is obviously at some point for it to normalize and bring it back down.
Yep, that's good. Okay, now 2012 is launched. You're up to 200 customers today. You mentioned $50,000 kind of ACV on average. That would put you at about $800,000 a month right now in revenue. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay. Is that so yeah, what I did, there's 200 times $4,000 a month, right? Which is a $50,000 ACV.
So our, that is the average deal size over the past quarter and a half. And where we figured out like those are the deals that we can close and we can go through, we can compress the sales motion, the sales cycle, and we can hit deals at that size very quickly. So pricing has been a bit of a struggle for us just because nobody else does what we do. So coming up with a pricing model, you have to base it on a mixture of what are the high volume API businesses like a Twilio doing versus what are the people in the contract, e-signature space like the DocuSigns of the world doing. And we come out in a hybrid of that. So, over the past year, we've gathered enough data that we've been able to figure out pricing. So if we're talking in a year from now, then the number you just threw out should be right. You think you'll break $800,000 a month in about a year from now? Yeah. So if we operate to plan, we would be to that point about beginning of Q4 of next year.
Okay, that's good. And what does that have you doing? Like tripling year over year or doubling year over year or what?
That's tripling year over year. So we'll end this year right around 3 million, and then we'll need to just about triple that next year.
That's good. And can I ask where you're at today? How close to the 3 million are you?
Yeah, we're just over 2 million.
That's great. Okay, I mean that doesn't seem like a great. A lot of founders they get on here, they go, "We're going to add like 300% over the next 3 months," and I'm like, "Yeah, good luck, buddy." That seems like a pretty fair growth rate. So if you're doing 2 million in kind of ARR today, which is about $160,000 a month, where were you exactly a year ago?
A little less than half of that.
Okay, good. That's great growth. All right, let's wrap up here, Brian, with the famous 5. Number 1, what's your favorite business book?
Ooh, I guess one I just read, Profit from the Core.
Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
No.
Number 3, what's your favorite online tool for building your company?
Ooh, Slack.
Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
6.
Okay, and what's your situation? Married, single, kiddos?
Married with 2 kids, 12 and 10-year-old girls.
You're busy. And how old are you?
I'm 44.
44. Last question. What do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
20-year-old self. people over process.
Guys, there you have it. PactSafe built it for himself internally to help make click wraps more essentially easy to understand and manage. They're doing about $2 million in ARR today, hoping to be at about $8 million or $800,000 a month in about call it 16 to 18 months from now. They're up from 80 grand a month a year ago, so doubling year over year. Healthy economics, about $8 million raised as they look to continue to scale PactSafe. Again, a high velocity contract acceptance platform. Brian, thanks for taking us to the top.
Thank you.